Did you know that sometimes offering incentives to people actually makes them less motivated? Did you know that sometimes to increase how motivated you are, the secret is to actually aim lower? So many people make so many mistakes when it comes to motivation. And in this episode of the Change Your Minds podcast, I'm going to unravel it all. I'm going to explain exactly what motivation is, exactly how it works. We'll look at some of the historical, theoretical understandings of motivation as time went on. But most important of all, we're going to be looking for what are the specific things you can do to increase motivation in yourself and other people. And we're going to especially look at motivating people at work. Let's face it, one of the toughest places to motivate people in is when they're working. And so in this episode, we're going to talk about everything you need to know about motivating yourself and other people. This one is going to be a game changer. Strap in and let's get ready to go. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Change Your Minds podcast. And I am super motivated. Super motivated. You know why? Because today we're talking about motivation. And I wanted to be, you can't talk about, imagine I showed up like this going, okay, today we're going to be talking about motivation and how powerful it is and how important it is to be motivated. And I really hope that you find this. That wouldn't work. So you need me to be motivated. Now you don't need me to be over the top. You don't need me to be like in your face, oh, motivation. But I'm just going to give just enough energy to be motivated, but not too much. Just not too much. And so in this episode, we're going to be looking at what motivation is. We're going to talk about, again, understanding motivation, the difference between motivation and discipline. We'll look at the history of motivation. We'll look at the science of motivation. We'll talk about the neuroscience a little bit as well, because I know you love that. We'll also look at how to motivate yourself and other people, and how to motivate people to be able to actually get things done. So how do you motivate people at the beginning of a project, in the middle of a project, and at the end of a project? Overall, this is going to be one of the most useful episodes that you have ever listened to. I also, by the way, just to plug it, I also have what's known as the Motivation School. If you go to changeyourminds.com, in there in the store, you'll find Motivation School, which is a 3-hour course by me where I walk you through the different areas of motivation and I help you understand how you can be more motivated moving forward. I also have Habit School there if you want to change habits. And I even have Discipline School if you want to become more disciplined. So lots of great schools. I think there's like more than a dozen, probably 15, 16, even 17 different types of schools there, all available, as well as my Change Your Minds monthly membership and the Thought Leaders mentorship. But you're here to learn about motivation. And as such, what I want to do is start off by helping you understand a little bit about how we understand and how we describe and how we define motivation. So motivation is the driving force behind actions that lead us towards pursuing our goals, desires, and needs, intrinsic and extrinsic. And intrinsic motivation is really the motivation that we have internally, right? The motivation to be a certain kind of person, the motivation to do things for our own reasons. Whereas extrinsic motivation is when we're motivated by external rewards. We're motivated by money. We're motivated by status, those kinds of things. Discipline, on the other hand, is the ability to regulate and manage your own emotions and thoughts and actions in pursuit of a long-term goal. So discipline is really, I do it just because I'm going to do it. I decide I'm going to do it and then I take action. I don't need to feel like doing it. Motivation is I feel like I want to do it or need to do it, because if I don't, then I feel bad. And if I do, I feel good, pain and pleasure. Whereas discipline is much more, I'm motivated to take the action maybe at the start, but now I'm disciplined, which means I'm just going to do what it is that I need to do because that's what I'm supposed to do. So it's almost like you're doing it regardless, independent of how you feel. And we need to be able to have both. We need to balance motivation and discipline. Motivation is not enough to succeed with your goals. It's not enough to change your habits. But discipline by itself is not necessarily a good plan either. We need both. We need motivation to get us going. We need discipline to keep us going. And sometimes, obviously, bursts of motivation will help. But in order for us to succeed, we need to master the art of both. But today we're going to be looking at motivation specifically itself. And to start off with, let's look at the history of motivation. Right? So what have people been saying from the dawn of civilization about motivation itself? Well, first of all, Plato talked about what he called the tripartite soul, which was really consisting of 3 different things: reason, spirit, and appetite. And the way he kind of described it, right, because it was that kind of day, he said there's someone riding a chariot, and the rider of the chariot is the reason. And then the two horses, there's a horse, a black horse, a white horse, and the two horses are spirit and appetite. So let me walk you through the rational part. I know seems like, what's this to do with motivation? I promise there's a point to this. So the rational part is you, the one who's driving the chariot, and you seek truth and knowledge. It covers reasoning and wisdom. If you will, it's like the prefrontal cortex as we know it from a neuroscience perspective. The spirited part is the emotions, the courage, the honor, all the feelings, the emotions, right, that are going on inside of you. And the appetited part is the part of you that's like the desire, the bodily needs, the hunger, the thirst, the sexual urges, all that sort of crack. So you've got the instincts. I don't know why I make that facial expression, but instincts, the sex, hunger, thirst, instincts. Then you've got the emotions, and then you've got the rational, right? So I'm giving you over-the-top stereotypes. Of course, that's ridiculous. But the point of it is the rational is the one who's like riding the horse, and the whole goal, as Plato said, is that you, as the rational driver of the chariot, you want to make sure that you get those horses going in the direction you want to go in. Otherwise, they go off course and you're screwed. And then the chariot will go wherever it goes, and it's probably not going to bring you somewhere nice. So make sure you're in control over those two horses. Anyway, what's that got to do with motivation? Well, if you look at it, when Plato talks about the spirited part, the emotional part, but even the appetitive part, both of those are examples of elements of motivation that we have. So we have those kind of sides to us that Plato would describe and talk about. Aristotle talked about all human actions are motivated by the pursuit of happiness, what he called eudaimonia, right? And this is, as opposed to the hedonistic approach, which is like just doing things for pleasure. Eudaimonia is living a good life, living a virtuous life. And he says that we're motivated to live a virtuous life. And he said that we have what he called natural desires and unnatural desires. So natural desire is something that makes sense that we should desire it, whereas an unnatural desire is something that is manufactured to make us want it, even though we shouldn't want it, or it's not necessarily good for us. Most importantly, it's not going to allow us to achieve this form of happiness known as eudaimonia. So William James, famous psychologist, explored the role of the will and instincts as primary motivations in his work, Principles of Psychology, the famous book that was written in 1890. Sigmund Freud, of course, that old guy, that old chestnut, comes up and he talks about the importance of the unconscious mind and proposed that human behavior is driven by instinctive desires, particularly sex and aggression. Fascinating guy. Definitely got a lot of stuff going on there. But Freud, in a nutshell, obviously he came up with some great stuff, the conscious, the unconscious mind. But Freud would talk about the instinct, the urge, right? As the Oedipus complex, where he said most guys want to sleep with their mother and kill their father, and sort of kind of warped, weird stuff. Like you're going, Sigmund, I think you need to, do a little bit of introspection, mate. I don't think most people are like that, But nonetheless, he had his theories, some very, very, really well-written books, some very powerful. He's one of the most popular influences on psychology since the beginning of psychology. So there's a lot of stuff that you should be taking and listening to from him. He definitely came to the table with a lot of very interesting ideas. But he really emphasized quite a lot of our motivations are to do with sex, and a lot of our motivation is to do with aggression and violence. And his argument would be, if you look at a lot of children, their first resort is often towards violence. And if you look at what drives a lot of behaviors, sex tends to be a great motivator. So he spent a lot of time sort of looking at those as primary motivations. J.B. Watson and B.F. Skinner, two behavioral psychologists, of course, talked about observable behavior. They weren't interested in what was going on inside the head. They were more interested in this can be reinforced. Therefore, we're like humans are like blank slates, and we can just train a human to become anything we want them to be. So they were like eliminating the thought of the mind, and we're just like conditioning people like you're an animal, so we'll condition you. And so their idea of motivation was much more, it's just about reinforcement and punishment. Then we get into the real, let's say, motivation researchers. And one of the most popular, if not the most popular researcher of motivation ever was Abraham Maslow. And Maslow proposed that human motivation was driven by a hierarchy of needs. And this was shaped in a form of a pyramid. And right at the bottom of the pyramid was the basic needs that we need in order to survive. And as you get them, you need to complete that level in order for you to get to the next one and the next one and the next one until you get to the pinnacle. So it started at the bottom and it was physiological needs. So this is basic hunger, water, thirst, shelter, sleep. These were basic survival physiological needs, and you need to get them first. Once you're sorted on them, then you go to the next level. And the next level up was the safety needs. These are security, stability, protection from harm. You're part of a group, therefore you're safe from other invaders and that kind of thing. The third was love and belonging. These are the needs of social relationship. We need to feel loved. We need to be as part of a group. We need to feel affection, those kind of things. The next one up, if you are sorted, let's say you've got all the physiological needs sorted, you feel totally safe and you've got good relationships going on. The next was esteem needs. These are self-esteem, recognition, respect from other people, feeling like people respect you and think you're great. And then lastly, if you've got esteem sorted, you go all the way up to self-actualization, realizing your personal potential, your self-fulfillment, seeking personal growth and peak experiences, and being enlightened. And so these are the kind of needs that Maslow suggested are driving us. And the aim is that we need to take care of the bottom ones as we go up so that we end, hopefully, at self-actualization. Another theory that came along was by a guy called Victor Vroom. That's such a childish thing to do. His name is Vroom, right? But instead of just saying Vroom, I have to make that vroom. I'm even laughing at myself. That's how childish I am. Apologies, but he came up with the expectancy theory. And he said motivation is a result of individual expectations about the ability to perform tasks and receive desired rewards. Very, very straightforward, very, very simple. One would suggest very commonsensical. And if you look at it, he talked about expectancy. This is the belief that the effort will lead to the reward. Instrumentality, the belief that successful performance will lead to the specific outcome. And valence, the value or importance placed on the expected rewards. So you expect it and you value the reward and you believe that you can perform well and performing well will get you the reward. That's what motivates you. And that's his theory. Vroom. It will allow you to, I'm going to stop doing that. I got to stop doing the vroom. Sorry. Another very famous theory in motivation is the self-determination theory, or SDT as it's known. And this was discussed by Edward Deci and Richard Ryan. They focused on intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. So again, what I mentioned at the beginning, intrinsic motivation is when you're motivated by things inside of you. Extrinsic motivation is rewards that you get from outside. And they emphasize the importance of autonomy, competence, and relatedness. These were the sort of intrinsic rewards that make the most difference. So their argument is we're more motivated by intrinsic rewards than extrinsic rewards. And one of the interesting bits of research from here was that they found that whenever, let's say, they gave children a task to do, where they have a certain challenge to complete, they gave that task to children and they checked to see how likely would the child be to want to keep persisting with that task or indeed try another task out, right? So how motivated would they be to try another task after doing that first challenge? And they did it in condition one where they just gave the children the task. And then they gave a second condition where they didn't just give the children the task, they also paid them for doing it. They rewarded them for doing it. And what they found was that the children were actually less motivated to keep at the challenge and less motivated to take on a second challenge when they were paid than in the first situation when they weren't paid. So in that case, the incentive actually reduced the amount of motivation. And that's where this notion of intrinsic motivation is, in a lot of cases, a lot more powerful than extrinsic motivation. Now, generally, this works better with challenging tasks. If it's something very, very simple, then incentives can work quite well. Extrinsic motivation can work quite well. But for anything challenging that requires your creativity or ingenuity or any of that sort of stuff, a lot of the enjoyment we get is from that challenge. And so once again, the intrinsic motivations that they talked about was autonomy. That's feeling in control over your own actions. That's competence. This is feeling effective and capable. And relatedness, feeling connected and belonging with others. So if you can satisfy those three, if you want to motivate yourself or other people to take action, can you make it so they have a sense of autonomy? Can you make it so that they feel that they're able to do it, they feel effective and competent? And can you make it so that it allows them to be able to bond with other people? If so, you're much more likely to motivate them successfully as a result. Daniel Pink, in his book Drive, kind of did a variation of this theory. He talked again about intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation, but this wasn't a science experiment or wasn't a study by any means, but it was a very good book, and he's got a great YouTube video summarizing the findings of the book. But in a nutshell, instead of autonomy, competence, and relatedness, Daniel Pink suggested autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And so for him, those three were the most important elements. So autonomy is, again, our ability to feel control over the actions that we take and over our lives. Mastery is the feeling that we can not just become competent, but we can challenge ourselves to become better. So it's really about the desire to master something is something that motivates a lot of people. And then purpose is the drive to make an impact in some way. We have an overall purpose that is driving us moving forward. So that's also an interesting variation. There's also the goal setting theory by Edwin Locke and Gary Latham. And this highlighted the importance of setting specific challenging goals and explored the role of feedback. So it's important to make sure that you've goals that are clear and specific, that challenge you in some way, that you make a commitment to it, that you're committed to the goals themselves, that you're getting regular feedback on how you're doing in relation to them, and the goals are appropriate to the complexity of the task. So in other words, if it's a simple goal, then the tasks should be simple enough. If it's a complex goal, we should know for it. So we know that there's a certain amount of effort that we need to put into that task. So the key there is recognizing the power of goals. And as a result of that, by setting the right kind of goals, we can motivate ourselves. Just a couple more. We got McClelland's human motivation theory. And McClelland talked about three needs we have, as opposed to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. McClelland said really it comes down to three things: the need for achievement, the need for affiliation, and the need for power. Again, some overlap here. The need for affiliation is the need to connect or bond with other folks. The need for achievement is getting a certain result, and that could again be related to status, or it could be related to mastery. And the need for power, once again, that's the need to be able to exert power over the world. But a lot of times that could be associated with the autonomy stuff. So definitely some relationships between McClelland and between some of the other theories that we have discussed so far. And then Tony Robbins, good old Tony, right? He comes up and he talks about the needs theory. He said human beings have 6 primary needs. And the 6 primary needs are certainty, variety, connection, significance, growth, and contributions. Let me walk through these. We all have a need for certainty. We want to feel certain, and that's why uncertainty is such a pain in the arse. Whenever we're uncertain about something, we feel anxious and scared and stressed. But at the same time as certainty, we also want variety. If things are too safe, too simple, too easy, we're too sure about it, we get bored. So we have our need for variety as well. And these two sort of counterbalance each other. They affect each other. So on the one hand, we want certainty. On the other hand, we want variety. Variety is the spice of life. Certainty is the salt of the earth. I don't know. I just made that one up. But bottom line is we need both. Then there's connection and significance. Connection is we bond with other people. I feel like other people. I connect with other people. Significance is I stand out. I'm different. Once again, there's a little bit of conflict between these two. On the one hand, I want to be connected. I want to be just like everyone else. I want to be with everyone else. On the other hand, I want to stand out. I want to be better than everyone else. I want to be different to everyone else. I want to be unique. I'm unique like a footprint. I'm unique like an icicle. I'm unique like a unicorn. I don't know if icicles are unique, but unicorns are, as are footprints. So there you go. And so then we had growth and contribution. So on the one hand, you want to grow, but you also want to make an impact. And so his theory was that a lot of times, in order to understand why a person isn't changing, you'll see that they're not motivated enough to change because one or more of their needs aren't met. As a result of this particular model, he was able to sort of point to that, which is quite interesting. So let's talk. That's really a good exploration of the science. I also have my own drives model of motivation, things like status, power, money, competition, challenge, recognition, a bunch of others as well. I've got 12 drives model that I built a few years ago. I'll cover that in another episode, but it's the best. It's probably the best, probably better than all the rest, better than anyone that I've ever met. I'll stop. I almost went into song there, but I didn't. So count your chickens lucky. That's not the expression, is it? Count your chickens. Don't count your chickens before they hatch is the expression, but count yourself lucky. I don't remember what it is, but figure it out. The neuroscience of motivation. What happens in your brain when you're motivated? That is the question that I hear you ask now, at least. First of all, we have 3 different types of circuits, or 3 different types of pathways in circuits, rather, right? We'll try to be as specific as possible. We got the mesolimbic pathway. We got the mesocortical pathway. We also got a circuit in the brain called the corticostriatal circuit. What a mouthful that is. Corticostriatal. Tell you what, you are going to impress some amount of people at parties with that one. But we'll go into the mesolimbic pathway. This is sort of the reward circuit known as the dopamine desire pathway. This runs from the ventral tegmental area to the nucleus accumbens, the NA. And this is really about driving action by desire and reward and all that sort of stuff. The mesocortical pathway, on the other hand, is much more about control of dopamine. So it sends dopamine from the VTA to the prefrontal cortex. And this is more about cognitive control, decision-making, long-term regulation of motivational states, that sort of stuff. But there's a circuit. A circuit in the brain is more like a bunch of different neurons in different parts of the brain firing. But basically, there's a circuit whereby our brain is integrating information from the prefrontal cortex about, let's say, the value of something that we've done. And the nucleus accumbens, right, which is where all the drive is sort of coming from. So the VTA sends the dopamine to NA, the nucleus accumbens, and then we're motivated to take action. So the brain sort of takes the information from the prefrontal cortex, which is logically sort of evaluating the reward, plus the feeling that we got from the NA, towards goal-directed behavior. And so it evaluates the potential outcomes of actions and allows us to make better decisions. So in other words, this sort of corticostriatal circuit allows us to be able to calculate moving forward what we need to do to succeed. And therefore, we're able to evaluate the motivation that we need in order for us to take the actions that we need to. So it's really important for us to understand that dopamine itself is like the primary chemical involved when it comes to motivation. Dopamine is more about wanting and not about liking, as once again we would have covered at the other episode. A few hacks that are important to know. Dopamine is not so much about happiness, it's more about motivation. Motivation is more about what we want in the future as opposed to feeling good about the present, which is more where chemicals like serotonin is about. And motivation itself has a pain and pleasure element. So it's towards pleasure and away from pain. And this actually follows with what dopamine does, because when dopamine fires up and you get a massive burst of dopamine, it makes you want something a lot. But after that, our brain starts to compensate. And what happens is we now have a little bit of pain in the form of craving. So that craving, that painful craving that we have, the need we have in order to have something just to be okay, and the desire we have to have something to make us better, that's really the two sides of motivation, towards pleasure and away from pain. And the pain in this context is the craving. So we're motivated by craving, away from pain, and we're motivated by desire towards what we do want to achieve. And that's kind of how we need to understand it. And so some of the factors that stimulate the release of dopamine include big rewards. The bigger the reward, the more motivated we are because the more dopamine is fired. If we can achieve the reward, if we know it's possible, but if we know it's unpredictable or challenging, that enhances motivation. So in other words, if we want to motivate ourselves, set a challenging goal that's hard to get, that we're not sure we can, but we want to. And we can, but we're not 100% sure that we will, rather. Novelty also enhances motivation. Progress, noticing that we're making progress. We've got milestones, enhances motivation. And we also have to look not just at dopamine, but norepinephrine. This is involved in arousal and alertness. It helps focus attention and energy on tasks, and it engages and enhances goal-directed behavior. So it really gives us a burst of energy. It allows us to accomplish what we want, but it's also manufactured from dopamine. There's a relationship between dopamine and norepinephrine as well. But that's also a chemical that helps us to be able to have the requisite energy to be able to achieve what we want and allow us to succeed. So why do we struggle with motivation? Well, there's a few reasons really. I suppose one of the reasons that we struggle with motivation is that we forget the why. The why, Simon Sinek will tell you, you need to start with why. What great leaders do to inspire action is his TED Talk, where he talks about why. That's this wonderful golden circle he talks about. And the key is you need to start with why and then go to how and then go to what. But reality is that oftentimes we forget the why, and the why is the seed of the motivation. If I say, what do you want? You say, I want to lose weight, and I say, why? The answer that you give me will tell me the motivation you have, but will also motivate you as you're answering that question. And this is true in the business world as well. We get distracted by shiny object syndrome. That's another thing. Part of the problem with motivation is that something else comes along to motivate us to want to do that instead, and it's difficult for us to prioritize. We also have dopamine depletion. So sometimes we can be wanting so much that we burn out. And as a result of that, we don't want anything. And then we also have lack of clarity. So we're not 100% sure of what we want. And as a result of that, we can't really take the actions that we need to. So with all of that in mind, let's talk about what you're really here for, which is what are the techniques we can use to motivate ourselves and other people? And we'll really emphasize a lot more of it in terms of motivating other people, because especially from a business point of view, that's what you want to be able to do. You want to be able to motivate other people. First of all, to motivate or to boost levels of motivation in other people, one of the things to do is to enhance the power of visualization. So for you, you visualize exactly what you want as vividly as you can and you make it exciting. For other people, you describe what they want as vividly as you can and you make it exciting and appealing. Another way to do it is to give people examples, prime people by showing people examples of others that are having what it is that they want. So if you look at most commercials, it's a commercial of someone enjoying, let's say, enjoying a chicken sandwich. And as you watch them, your brain is actually starting to build up the desire to want that as well. So when we watch other people consuming something, enjoying something, doing something, we're more likely to feel motivated to do that as well, right? This is known as mimetic desire. You look at somebody else doing something, you're more likely to want to do it as well. And reminding yourself of how this will make a difference to you. So making something relevant tends to boost the level of motivation. You bring it back to, how will this help me? Let's talk then about intrinsic and then extrinsic strategies for motivation. And so when we talk about intrinsic strategies, these are strategies to motivate us by how this will make us feel internally about ourselves. So the first one is to set clear goals. Set specific goals that are measurable, that are challenging, that are exciting, and these will provide direction and purpose and will get us going. It will get us going in the right direction. Break things down, so notice the progress you're making. Notice how well you're doing. Set yourself with milestones along the journey. That's going to motivate you as well. It elevates levels of dopamine because we can see that we're actually getting closer and we're doing better. Provide autonomy. So give yourself a chance of feeling a sense of autonomy over what you want to achieve. And again, remember, this still works with other people. Set clear, exciting, challenging goals. You challenge your team. You give them a clear goal that's specific, that's measurable, that is hard to do, but they can do it. You make them excited about it so they have clear direction. You build milestones into it so that they can know the progress and you work together in a team to identify those milestones. You give them a sense of autonomy where they feel that they're doing it themselves, which is really, really helpful. You create a sense of purpose that they're making an impact by achieving this goal. So you connect the goal to the wider organization and how the goal will actually enhance the team's results as well as the organization as a whole. You then find opportunities for mastery. So you go, how can this help them to become better, to improve their skill, to become masterful at what they do? And you're able to present it in such a way that they can see a path towards mastery by taking the actions that you want them to take. You foster a growth mindset by praising their effort, praising the work that they've put in, giving them feedback and helping them to continuously see themselves as someone who can improve, who can get better. And with this growth mindset, they're naturally going to be more motivated. You use positive reinforcement. So whenever they do a great job, use immediate and specific positive feedback. So as soon as you notice them doing something well, give them positive recognition and feedback on that to make them feel good about themselves. And do this every now and then when you see them consistently and continuously performing well. Encourage curiosity. So encourage them asking questions and you ask questions. That'll also generate a lot of motivation. Make the tasks fun. So try to find ways to gamify it or make the jobs themselves fun. Give yourself a time limit to do something you don't like, or find ways to be able to make it so that the team is competing against each other in a fun way. Enable personal relevance. Make sure that everyone can see how what you're talking about and what you're asking them to do is relevant to them specifically and relevant to their goals. Play around with novelty, do something new, get them to do it in a new way, doing something they've never done before, and something that allows them to express themselves. Research shows that whenever we express ourselves, whenever we get an opportunity to express our creativity, express our ingenuity, express our opinion, this is something that will also have a byproduct of motivating us. Other things are start small. Give people small things to do so they can start to build up momentum and therefore notice they're making progress and therefore build confidence and feel more motivated as a result. And then eat the frog is the other approach where you get us to do, look, we just need to tackle this big project, the hardest project first, and then everything will be easier afterwards. So they're more motivated to get over this hump so that they can enjoy the rest of the day. Those are some great strategies you can use to motivate other people intrinsically. Now, in terms of extrinsic motivation, you're talking about extrinsic rewards. So as opposed to recognition, you're talking about monetary rewards, you're talking about food rewards, you're talking about those kind of rewards, even status rewards. Offer incentives to people that if they do this, then they will get that. Use public recognition. So this is praising people in front of a lot of other people. That tends to be, again, something that comes from external validation. You've got performance-based rewards, which oftentimes can be helpful and useful. Provide career advancement opportunities for them so that they can see how this route will lead them towards something, again, that they want to get outside. Set up competitions so that they feel themselves competing and they feel that they can win at something in public. Offer flexible work arrangements to make it easier for them to do things in their own way. Give meaningful feedback so they get external feedback and validation of what they're doing well. And then get them to hold themselves accountable to other people. So create accountability and socialize accountability through the team so that everyone is holding each other accountable to actions in a good way. Not like, oh, I told you didn't do that. Not blame-wise, but actually doing it in a really, really great way. Now, once again, those are some strategies for intrinsic motivation and extrinsic. Generally, if you're trying to motivate them to do something simple and something automatic and something anyone can do, extrinsic can work quite well. But for all kinds of tasks where it requires ingenuity or skill or challenge or creativity or any of that sort of stuff, intrinsic rewards tend to be the best way to be able to motivate people to take the actions that they need to. Now, finally, I do want to talk about social and environmental strategies, and then we'll go into motivating people to actually get a project done, right? We'll give specifics in there. So social environmental strategies are really about, number one, encouraging teamwork, which will help each other to start to motivate each other along the way. When we tend to have each other's backs and we encourage each other, that makes it a lot easier. Provide mentorship and support so people feel that you are there as an aid for them and helping them. Facilitate peer recognition so that they can recognize each other and see how well we're doing. Promote work-life balance so they've got opportunities to be able to enjoy life, and that will in turn give them more energy when they're at work. Give them the opportunity for continuous learning because that's going to keep driving them moving forward to want to continuously master things. Cultivate a sense of community in the culture of the organization that they're working in. Make it an inclusive environment so everyone feels psychologically safe. Encourage open communication so people feel free to be able to chat and talk and say whatever it is that they think and feel. And set a positive example yourself that's going to influence people and motivate people as well. Finally, how do you motivate a person to get a project done? We're going to talk about it in 3 phases. Number 1, how do you motivate them to start? Number 2, how do you motivate them to continue? And 3, how do you motivate them to finish? So let's start with motivating them to start. First of all, to motivate someone to start a certain project, the first thing you need to do is to create some sort of urgency. You want to create an urgency that time is running out, you need to do it, and if you're going to do it, it needs to happen now. How do you do that? You get them to pay attention to what will happen if they don't do it today. So what are they going to lose out on? What are they going to miss out on? You're going to leverage the power of loss aversion, that we tend to be more motivated by what we have to lose than we are by what we potentially have to gain. So you're focusing on that as a way to drive urgency in that context. You want to focus on the need. Why is this necessary? Not just why is it desirable, but why is it necessary, and emphasize and have an argument clearly, a story clearly describing why it is indeed necessary. You've got timing. You want to make sure that you're starting at the right time. You're clear that people know when they're starting, and you're breaking things down to the point that they know exactly what steps they need to take and when they need to take it. You want to start them with the littlest step, so make it very easy for them to get started. And as soon as they get started, you're immediately getting them recognized and making them feel good about it so that they're able to build some momentum. You want them to have a clear vision of the end goal when they're starting. So how amazing will it be once you've successfully completed this project? How wonderful would that be? And you might flip it as well to going the disgust of how bad will it be if you fail at this. So you get them to imagine not succeeding, and you create that sort of disgust once again as a motivation that drives them forward. Those are the kinds of things that will get them started at least. Then you've got continuing the particular project. How do you keep people going in the messy middle when they're struggling with things and they're going, oh, I've had enough of this? How do you boost the motivation? Well, first of all, to maintain the motivation, you want to be able to understand that the term grit, popularized by the book called Grit by Angela Duckworth, she talks about really the key to being gritty is passion and perseverance. Passion is emotion or the desire to be able to take action, something that you're enjoying you're enjoying the challenge, you're enjoying the struggle of it all. And then perseverance is your ability to persevere through the ups and downs and the challenges and the impediments and the obstacles that are in your way. And you need both to be able to be gritty. But really, when it comes to motivating people moving forward, you can set up certain boosters or certain triggers along the journey. So what are the kinds of things you can do in the middle of a project that gets everyone excited again? So as you go, let's say it's a 12-month project. What can you do at the end of Q1, the end of Q2, the end of Q3 that will motivate people, that will make people feel more driven, more motivated for them to keep moving forward and to keep on track? And by setting up specific celebrations, specific events where you're focusing again on the vision, where you're praising them for the work that they've done so far, where you're encouraging them, where you're giving them pep talks, right? You're talking about how great they're doing, how well they're doing. You're focusing their attention on the progress. You're surrounding them with supportive people. You're encouraging them all. All of that is great to do along the journey, and we should be thinking about that along the line. If you think you're just going to be super motivated from January 1st to December 31st, you got another thing coming. It's not the way it works. So set yourself up for all the times you think the motivation might be dwindling. That's when you need to set yourself into the process of being able to continue on. And finally, how do you motivate them to finish your project? Again, get the vision there. They're at the finishing line. Get them seeing the vision as clearly as possible. So what kind of person will they be once they complete this? And attach the vision with their identity. How incredible will it not just feel, but what kind of person will they be once they've completed this? Get them to think about the impact that they are making by finishing this project. The difference that this will make. Really emphasize that. Emphasize the rewards that they will get when they finished it. And you might even get them excited about the next project so that they can already see at the finishing line the next exciting project. Because also, they don't want to have the emptiness of, well, what next? I just achieved this, and then what am I going to do? You want the next project after that, which brings them home. And by getting them to feel that, you're going to help them to be driven and motivated towards getting to the finishing line and accomplishing and finishing what it is that they need to. A whole host of different motivational strategies and tools we have just covered. And if you want to check them out, go over the episode, watch it again. There's lots of stuff there. I wanted this to be a masterclass in motivation, to walk you through the most important elements that you need to know about motivation. And I really hope that you can take the insights you gained here and you can use them in your own personal life, but also in your professional life. And if you're the leader or manager of a team, that you can use these particular techniques to master the ability you have to drive performance, to motivate other people and inspire other people such that they're performing better than ever, completing the projects they need to complete, and doing what it is that they need to do at the highest level possible. If you're interested in learning more about motivation, as I mentioned at the beginning, I got Motivational School. I also got Habit School. I got Performance School, which is another cool one as well. And you can check all of that out at changeyourminds.com. Also want to remind you, if you're interested in reading from me on a regular basis every Tuesday, you'll get an email called Inner Propaganda, and it is released weekly, and it's a very, very cool email where I walk through, sometimes very connected to the podcast, but I walk through an article hoping to change your mind about some particular thing and teaching you various different new insights and new skills that can help you to be able to improve how you communicate with yourself and with other people. But for now, I hope you're motivated. I hope you're motivated enough to check out the next episode that is going to be recommended in a moment. But for now, take care. Please rate and review the podcast, share it, let people know. And most of all, may the force be with you and may life continue to get even better. Bye-bye.